Gendroye, everyone, how are you? It's a sunny day here in Dansk. They told me that it would have been rainy. I'm from Italy, and it's rainy now in Italy, and here we have very nice weather. So, welcome everyone. Today we'll talk about the evolution of web development, a little bit of history, and we'll try to understand the trends. We are on the dev trend stage, so let's try to make it worthy. So we'll try to answer this question. Is web development better or worse than 20 years ago? Let's see. Okay, before we start, a quick introduction. Hi, I'm Francesco. I'm developer advocate at daily.dev. I'm very active on Twitter and YouTube. Sorry, I didn't have time to change the slide to X, so it's Twitter for now. And I've been working at daily.dev for about 3 years so far. Also, thank you, daily.dev, for the design of these slides. So let's make it very quick. In the early days of web development, in 1991, the World Wide Web goes live with Tim Berners-Lee. I couldn't make it to take a selfie with him last year. But basically, in 1991, there was the first static HTML page that is still live. I think many of you know about this. But the core concept, it was to share information. This is the main concept of the whole web development. And then in 1995, this thing came out. JavaScript has been introduced by Netscape. I was 12. I don't know how old you were, or probably you weren't born yet. But JavaScript basically enabled to have interactive websites. It was the root of all the evils, I would say. But we could have finally dynamic content and client-side scripting. Then, and this is curious, CSS became a standard just in 1998, so after JavaScript was born. And the core idea of CSS, it was and is still to separate content from design. And we still have this concept. Of course, now we have different frameworks, but the goal, it was to have something which is more visually engaging, of course. And this was also for the developers and the designers to create something which is consistent. Then in 2010, we started with the framework era. How many of you have used the first version of Angular.js? No one. One person. You just revealed your age. Okay. Okay, some core features. Me too, by the way. Some core features, two-way binding, so to synchronize the model and the view. And the core idea, it was to reduce how much code we were writing. And of course, I skipped jQuery as a framework, but I wanted to start with these types of family of frameworks. Another core concept that Angular.js introduced, it was in the JavaScript ecosystem, of course, the MVC architecture, so model view controller, to basically separate the logic, the presentation, and the data component in the whole application. And this started to be good for developers because they could simplify their development and also test what was working and what was not working. Then, 2013, React has been introduced with the JSX, with basically is a JavaScript syntax to allow HTML quotes and tag in the JavaScript code. Someone might claim that it's similar to PHP. And JSX makes to structure the component that are easier to read or not. Let's say it depends. I think if you get used. React also introduced the virtual DOM, and this allowed developers to create the web application without changing directly the DOM, but having something which was more oriented to performance. So because this was calculated in the most efficient way, sort of automatically. React introduced something very revolutionary, which is the component-based architecture. We will see that basically all the upcoming frameworks, or most of them, they used this component-based architecture. So what is the core idea of using this component-based application? To force, in a certain way, the developers to make something reusable, to have components that are reusable with their own state and mix them in these complex UIs. And I will say that this is reusable not just inside the single project, but also in upcoming projects. I can reuse the same components in my next projects of React. And of course, all of these made them more maintainable and also, of course, for scalability. How many of you have ever used React? React? More people, okay. And then 2014, with Vue.js, introduced the reactivity system, which was, let's say, more efficient and more simple in a certain way. Some people like Vue.js a lot. Who have ever used Vue.js? I use it sometimes. Okay, okay. And so the data, the changes of the data, they were propagated automatically, and this really helped to make something which was more, let's say, useful and easy to develop. Also, Vue.js copied React, I would say, used the React architecture, but the component-based architecture by Vue.js, it was more simpler to implement, and this lowered the learning curve for the developers, so to make it easier to create. Another great approach that Vue.js had, it was the directive system, also used by Angular later, but it was really a powerful way to extend some functionalities inside the HTML pages, inside the components. And because there are some behaviors that are done like repetitively. So we have something like vif, before, vbind, and all these directives are used and to focus on some features that we can do this inside the single component. So basically simplifying, I would say, the code base. It's clear if we read vif before what's going to happen in that component. And then moving forward to 2010 to 2020, Angular, let's say 2+. I think that the current one is Angular 17, if I'm not wrong. I think Angular 18 should be out soon, but don't be scared because now basically they're putting out a version every 6 months, I think. That's also the new logo. And it also introduced something very important, which is TypeScript. TypeScript by default adopted in the framework. And of course, we know that TypeScript extended, of course, hence the name, static types, added static types to JavaScript. And this is more design, and maybe for smaller projects, we don't see how useful TypeScript can be, but for bigger projects, I consider that very, very useful. And to create basically something which is more robust. If you mix this TypeScript with the component-based architecture that are used also by Angular, this made this more reusable. And again, I remind you that Angular.js didn't use this component-based architecture. Instead, Angular 2+, and also now, they're using this component, in this case, with these directives. Also, what Angular tried to do, it was to improve the performances. There is this website called the Smallest Angular Performance Cookbook. And this is also to test the current performance of Angular, and it was a great way for Angular to simplify the expression, and also it started using directives like Vue.js, and also the change detection. Okay, how many of you have ever seen the Angular.dev new website? Not many people, okay. But it's very nice. It's meant to try. They also embedded in the browser. You can type Angular code inside the browser at Angular.dev. 2016, Next.js. It has been introduced as a React framework, introduced by Vercel to enhance the capabilities of React. React, we can consider it more a library. Next.js is a full-fledged framework, React framework. We can call it even meta framework. And so basically the idea was to provide a framework that could do something else, not just what React did, also to improve to two main things. One, to have server-rendered applications, and also to improve SEO, search engine optimization, and the performances compared to the other approach. Another haha moment that I had with Next.js, it was when I noticed his file system-based routing. So basically, when you create your project locally, the structure of your folder in your application is reflected in the routes. To make it simple, if I have an API.ts file inside my pages, there will be a route/API exposed for the users. How many people have ever used Next.js? So, okay. And also, of course, automatic code splitting. So a cool idea of Next.js, it was, I think this is great, to split different code on different page based on the component. So basically to send less JavaScript and less stuff to the client. And also this really increased all the performances, including the time load, that we will see that it's one of the critical things. Other two features of Next.js are server-side rendering, SSR, and static site generation. And for SSR, basically this renders the page, and then it sends them to the client in just HTML format, which makes them very quick, very fast. In case of SSGs, basically they are built already, and then they're sent when there is a request from the client. And I would like to stop for 10 seconds to understand that I think that the launch of Next.js in 2016 has been a very important moment for the React ecosystem. There are also some graph of like how much people are using React rather than Angular, rather than Vue.js, because it really solved some issues of React, again, like SEO and the initial load times that are critical, especially for production-ready programs. And also something that I didn't put it here, but Next.js being created by Vercel, they made it ridiculously easy to deploy. So deploy something, probably if I would need to start a project after this talk, just to have something up and running on the web, I will probably use Next.js and Vercel. Let's talk about some trends, let's say, that started since 2017, but it's still very actual. Progressing web apps, I think they are something that we can invest some time on because of the nature of the progressing web apps. So they give an app-like experience. So it seems like an app because you can add them to the home screen. You can push some notifications to the users, like we can do in the apps. They can work offline with service workers, and they can have the permissions on the hardware. But for example, at daily.dev, we have a progressive web app up and running, and it has been useful to have it so far. We have had this for many years. Okay. I can't mention all the frameworks, but I want to mention a couple more. Whoever ever heard about Svelte? At least heard, not tried. Okay, some people. But it has been released in 2016, but I put this in 2020 because this is where it started to get some traction. And one cool feature I think that it has is that it moved the problem. So the problem of serving pages to the client has been partially solved by compiling the components and then give this with giving imperative code that directly changes the DOM. It's very quick, Svelte. Another one, Astro. I checked some talks, and usually the people who talk about Astro, they're very enthusiastic. I checked this a while, and the cool idea of Astro that I recommend to check, especially Astro, is a good use case is to create, for example, a simple blog, personal blog. I've seen something very cool and also quick done with Astro. One of the things is the partial hydration, where components are just partially hydrated, so basically made them interactive instead of having the entire page. And this is, of course, it helped the performance by a lot. Now, let's talk about recent trends, if you can say 2021 as recent. We know that we move kind of fast in tech. Here we go. Tailwind CSS, it promoted this utility-first approach, and personally, I like it. I think that it has changed the speed of development, so the developer experience, and the impact that it has that it can, basically after a while you understand, and adding these classes make it easier to deploy something, and then also it reduced the redundancy, so we don't have to write the same CSS code over and over again, or not. Okay, who is a fan of Tailwind CSS here? Okay, who are the haters of Tailwind CSS? No haters. Not a single hater. Okay. Okay, at least we had three fans. And then another special mention for Next.js, because Next.js, since 2016, it really continued to evolve a lot with automatic static optimization, the optimization of all the images, and it really starts to gain traction and became a sort of standard, I would say, especially with these server rendering capabilities. And as I said, for SEO, fetching strategies, there could be like a specific talk just for Next.js. So let's keep going. Let's go quick. Other trends, I think one of them is, of course, rely on serverless architectures that, for example, here I put AWS Lambda and Azure Functions. I think they can simplify the development and especially the scaling. This is, of course, also for the backend. And this can really, and this platform, so AWS and Azure, can help you to manage, let's say, of course, when we have something which has to scale, okay? Especially when we have a workload that changes over time, or maybe changes during the day, or maybe during the weekends it has a different workload compared to the weekdays. I think this is the last framework that I'm going to mention today, but I'm sure that I missed or I skipped some of them. One of them is Qwik, that has been introduced in 2023, but I knew about this in 2022 because I know the creator of Qwik, Misko. And the core idea of Qwik is to introduce this concept of resumability, and it's very focused, Qwik is very focused on increasing the initial time load, especially on devices who don't have like a great internet connection. So this can be great way, or even to start and to try. Just a few trends. One of them is WebAssembly. Have you ever heard about WebAssembly? Some people, okay. And so for more complicated apps, I think that WebAssembly is a good choice, especially if you hate JavaScript, because you can type code in C, C++, and Rust. Big fan of Rust. And so, for example, for gaming, and also some tools that allows you to work with media on the browser. We will see in the future, but I see this as a trend which is growing and growing. We will see in the future if this will replace JavaScript, but it will be hard to replace it. Special mention is, of course, for daily.dev, the company I work for. It helped me also to prepare this presentation. So if you want to stay up to date about the upcoming trends, you can check it out. Also for the best question or the best thing you say, I've also a physical board game for you. It's here. Soon we'll have a quick Q&A session. Before we end, I want to have at least a 5 minutes Q&A. Some bad trends. The first one is using a single-page application when it is not necessary. So for simple websites, or if we really care about SEO or the initial load time, a single-page application, which was a trend I think some years ago, is no more like the first choice because it can be complex also to maintain. Of course, it depends on the type of the application. We didn't mention AI so far because I'm sure that you will have all the talks about AI. So I intentionally didn't talk about AI for the whole talk, but I want to talk about maybe the bad side of it, that and also an excessive use of frameworks can overcomplicate the whole development and also the learning curve. Sometimes we need to learn a whole new framework just to make a project. So sometimes it might not get worth, and also to maintain the existing code, because once you start using a framework, I don't know, React, now there is a React 19, we need to start keeping the pace with with the framework itself. Maybe we want to do something else. And the last one I want to say is that bad trend, I would say more like something you should not do, is to use AI to basically exploit all the user data, because I've seen this in a couple of occasions. So using AI for violations of privacy, use dark patterns. So sadly, the AI also made these things a bit easier. So this is probably something that we should try to avoid, and also help to make other people don't do that. Okay, we are done for today. We have 5 minutes Q&A. Thank you. Again, I am Francesco from daily.dev. You can check me out there. I can even take a selfie, if that's okay for you, and then we can take a Q&A session, okay? Okay. That's it.
Hi, thank you for your talk.
Hi.
What about the developer experience? You didn't mention that. Do you think that this is a developer trend or not?
Yes, so developer experience, or DX, I didn't put it intentionally in the presentation because I think it should not be considered as a trend, but something that can help any possible framework. For example, we are seeing what's going on with blockchain development and Web3. They have a huge issue with developer experience. So the experience of developers basically will define if a framework will be successful or not, because the developers are the crafters, so the people who are going to create those tools. So if you are making the life of developers easier, your tool will probably be more successful. Otherwise, and also in the opposite way. So if the developers will start to don't like the process itself to develop, which is already hard by itself, probably this would mean a failure if you don't care about how the developer experience by coding, which is already a stressful activity.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay.
Hello.
Hi.
As a .NET developer, I missed in this presentation something about Blazor. So there is my question. What do you think about this technology?
Yes. So first of all, I'm sorry, but I could have to cut it quick. I know about that technology. I am a fan of C#, but more on the back end. I think is a good solution, but it's very specific. It's very specific for .NET developers. I never tried this personally, but for example, I have a couple of friends who used it and they like it. But it's maybe a bit less mainstream. Probably if you are in the .NET ecosystem, as you probably are, is probably a good choice. I didn't put this here because it was for a very specific kind of developers, but probably is a good choice. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, it was nice speak. Thanks. It's nice introduction for all web developers. What I miss is, do you have any hints to maintain big projects when you have the UI project that you need to maintain for a couple of years? And because when you see that it's changing so rapidly, it's hard to keep the developers there. If there, every year there is a new framework, that it would be nice to switch to it because it's better, faster, and how to deal with such fast, rapidly changing environment with huge UI projects.
Yeah, this is a real problem. I would also like to have the answer for this. I would probably say what you should not do. I will not switch the whole framework for a project every year, because otherwise it will be harder. So I don't know, if I started a project with Angular 5 years ago, I'll probably stick with that project, unless something really strange happens, and then I have to, maybe that framework is. I will switch only if that framework is not maintained anymore. So that would make a reason. I don't know, like Bower or some old web package. In that case, you have to switch. Otherwise, I think that it's probably not worth switching. I would probably, and I mean, let's not get intimidated, for example, by like Angular, now they have version like 17 or React 19, because most of the features, this is how it should be, they should be retro-compatible. Now, sometimes, sadly, this doesn't work, so in that case, you need to update. I think the best it will be to have active maintainers, especially, I don't know if the project is open source or not, but yeah, I think it's probably one of the most challenging things that almost makes us regret to use a framework rather than using something which is probably, if you'll use let's say, no framework at all, probably develop the single feature might be harder, but you will not have this issue, for example, if a framework makes some breaking changes. So I don't have the magic wand for this question. You made a very hard one, but the only thing is that to have like periodic check and having good maintainers. That's my only answer. Okay,
but because this leads me to another question that I also would like to have covered, or get some hint about, to organize such projects where you may mix some of the frameworks, because I don't see any current pattern to deal with it. There is something like a micro UI framework or to organize it, and we need to choose between this micro UI, mono repo, or some other patterns, but there are no battle-proofed solutions for that. Do you have any experience in it?
Yeah, I have some experience there, and I think that the best solution in this case, you have to organize more, so structure more. I think it depends on the size of the project. So if you have like a big project which has like millions of users, makes sense to have micro UI frontends. For smaller projects, probably I would use a single one, but that's my point of view. So I would not use micro UI frontends for projects which doesn't have millions of users or 100,000 of users. This is what I will do, because otherwise you are basically multiplying the frameworks. I think we are done. Okay. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you, Francesco. Yeah.